So we've made it to the final exam. Now the final exam is the same thing as all the other tests. It's 20 questions, it's multiple choice. The only difference is that you get 2 hours to take the test instead of 1 hour. All right, let's get started. So perform the division. If you look at the denominator, the degree on R is 1 and there's just one other term. I would do synthetic division on this one. So for synthetic division, you need to change the sign on the 2, which is the denominator. These need to go in order. If you have any gaps, you have to put a 0 in. So R to the 4th, that would be a 1. R to the 3rd, that would be a 2. R squared isn't there, so that's a 0. R would be -6. And the last digit is -15. So we draw our line. Bring down your first term, so that is 1. 1 times -2 is -2. 2 minus 2 is 0. 0 times -2 is -2. 0 minus... Wait a minute. I did that wrong. Okay, let's try that again. 0 times -2, let's erase that, is 0. Okay, 0 minus 0 is 0 again. 0 times -2 is 0. -6 plus 0 is -6. -6 times -2 is 12. The last guy is your remainder. -15 plus 12 is -3. So we will start writing our answer. So the quotient is R to the 3rd. You always start this with 1 less degree than you're given. So R to the 3rd, that would be plus 0R squared plus 0R. So that would be -6. And your remainder would be -3. Okay, the second one, I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do it with long division, just in case you can't use synthetic on the test. If this was like a v squared, or if you had a 2 in front of the v, or if this was multiple terms, more than 2 on the bottom, you would have to do long division. So we would have our v plus 4 on the outside. You're going to have to rewrite this so that the degrees are in order. So v to the 4th minus 5v to the 3rd minus 33v squared plus 10v minus 11. Okay, so to start out, I need 4 v's total. I have 1, so I need 3 more v's. So that's v to the 4th. V to the 3rd times v is v to the 4th. V to the 3rd times 4 is 4v to the 3rd. Okay, so when you draw your line, you want to change your signs. So that will go negative, that will go negative. So the v's cancel. -5 minus 4, that would be a -9v to the 3rd. Bring down your next term. So up here, I know I need a -9. And it's v to the 3rd, and I have a v, so I need a v squared. -9v squared times v is -9v to the 3rd. -9v squared times 4 would be -36v squared. Okay, draw our line, change our signs. So 36 minus 33, that would be a 3v squared. Bring down your next term. So on the top, I know I need a 3. And you'll notice there's always a pattern with the exponents. They go down, so 3, 2, the next one would be 1. So 3v times v is 3v squared. 3v times 4, so 3 times 4 is 12, so that's 12v. We're going to change our signs, so that's going to go negative and negative. So negative 12 plus 10 is negative 2v. Bring down your next one, so minus 11. So at the top, I know I need a minus 2. So negative 2 times v is negative 2v. Negative 2 times 4 would be a negative 8. Change our signs. So negative 11 plus 8, that's a negative 3. So our remainder is negative 3. All right, number 2, perform the indicated operation and simplify. So we need to get common denominators to be able to subtract these. So if I have a k minus 4 over here, then over here I need a k minus 4 on top and bottom. And over here, I need a k plus 3. So I just look at the two denominators and make sure they're both together. So on top and bottom here, I need a k plus 3. So on the top, you need to do distributive property. So 4k times k, that's 4k to the second power. And 4k times 3, that would be 12k. And our denominator is k plus 3, k minus 4. Okay, do distributive property over here. So 2 times k, that would be 2k. 2 times negative 4, that would be a negative 8. And then we have our k plus 3, k minus 4. Now the next thing you want to do is get rid of the minus sign right here in the middle. So I'm going to distribute it to both of these guys here and here. So I'll make the 2 a negative and that a plus. And then we'll combine like terms on the top. So we will have our k plus 3 and k minus 4 in the denominator. 4k squared doesn't match anything. So 12 minus 2, that's a 10k. Plus 8, and this would be your answer. Okay. The only other thing that you could do is try to maybe factor the top and see if something cancels with the denominator on here. But I believe that this should be the answer that you would find on your answer key. Okay, next one. So this one is very similar to this one, except for instead of the numbers being different, one of them is just backwards from the other one. So you could rewrite this. So we have 6 over x minus 1 minus x over negative x plus 1. So now you can see that these are the same denominator, it's just the signs are switched. So to switch back all the signs, you're going to take this entire thing and times it by -1, and that will get the signs in the correct order. So we have 6 over x minus 1 minus a negative x on the top, and then we would have -1 times negative x would be x, -1 times 1 would be -1. Change your signs here in the middle, and you're basically looking at your answer. 6 plus x over x minus 1. And that would be your answer for that one. Okay, the last one, she definitely likes this problem quite a bit. So what you want to do is you want to get the ones that are by themselves, and you want to make those have the same denominator as what's over here. So you want them to both have x's. So I'm going to make that one, it would be a 1 over 1. So if I multiplied it by x, I would have x over x plus our 1 over x. And then convert this one, the same thing, this would be 1 over 1 times both of those by x to get the same denominator. So that would be x over x minus 1 over x. Okay, then I would rewrite this with just having one denominator instead of 2. So x minus 1 over x. Now with your division right here, remember we're going to change that to multiplication and then flip the second fraction. So we leave the first fraction alone, change division to multiplication, flip your fraction here. So x over x minus 1. If you look at your two x's diagonally, remember the only way you can cancel is diagonally or up and down. You can never cancel sideways. So your x's will cancel. So you're left with x plus 1 over x minus 1. And that would be your answer for that question. Question number 3. Use the distance formula to find the distance between the two pairs of points. Keep your answer in radical format. Okay, so you will need to memorize the distance formula. I would go ahead and memorize the midpoint just in case she changes the word distance to midpoint. So x2 minus x1 squared plus y2 minus y1 squared. You're going to plug in your numbers. So I would probably make this one be x1, y1, x2, y2. So we have 3 minus negative 2 squared plus negative 2 minus negative 7 squared. Change your signs in the middle. So 3 plus 2, that would be 5 squared. Change your signs in the middle there. So 7 minus 2, again, that would be 5 squared. So 5 squared would be 25 plus another 25. So 25 plus 25, that would be 50. Okay, I would break down my 50. That would be 25 times 2. 25 breaks down as 5 times 5. The two 5s match. So that would be 5 square root 2. And that would be your answer. Now, of course, if you are doing this and you have your calculator, you could check all of the multiple choice answers and check your square root 50, and the decimals should match. So that's another way you could look at it. Okay, question number 4. Use your property of exponents to simplify the expression. Write with positive exponents. Okay, so the first thing you want to do is you want to look at your x's and we want to combine those on the top. Okay, so, and then we'll want to combine your two 3's in the front also. So 3 times 3, that is 9. And on the x's, if you remember, when you multiply, you're going to add the exponents. So this is 1/2 plus 2. So you have the 1/2 on the x there, the 2 there. So we're going to add those. Y to the 3/2 power divided by 2 to the 1/2, x to the 1/2 power. Okay, so 1/2 plus 2. So if we would add that, that would be 4 over 2, and 4 plus 1, that would be 5 over 2. Y to the 3/2 power divided by 2x to the 1/2 power. Now you want to deal with your x's going up and down. So when you have division, you subtract. I remember that because the division sign kind of looks like the subtraction sign without the 2 dots. So that's how I remember that. So this is 9x to the 5/2 power minus 1/2, y to the 3/2 power over 2. Okay, so we have 9x. Now let's think about this. So 5 minus 1, that's 4. And 4 divided by 2 is 2. And then, oh, that's a y. Y to the 3/2 power over 2. Okay, let me draw that y out better. Okay, second exponent problem over here. So first thing you want to do is you want to do distributive property with this 2 right here. Okay, so when you're doing that, you're going to be timesing. So this is x to the negative, and 2 times 5 would be 10 over your 4. So you're only going to times on the top. Y, 2 times 2 would be 4 over 3. Okay, then you have your x to the negative 3/4, y to the negative 3/4 over xy to the 5/4 power. Okay, and I believe I wrote this to be harder than what's on the actual test. So if you just understand the concept, then you should be okay. So we want to combine your x's here. So when we're timesing, we're going to add the exponents. Okay, so this is going to be x to the negative 10 over 4 plus negative 3 over 4. And we're going to add the exponents on the y. So y to the 4/3 plus negative 3/4. We'll keep the denominator the same for now. We'll combine that at the end. Okay, so we have x and negative 10 plus negative 3, that would be negative 13 over 4. Y, we have 4 minus 3. Okay, but the denominators aren't the same, so we got to get the denominators to be the same. So you can't just subtract there. Okay, so the denominator would be 12. So that's a 12 on the bottom. So we'd have to times this by 4. So I'm really looking at that being a 16. And 3 times 4, that would be a 12. So 16 minus 12 would be 7. All right, and I misspoke earlier, okay? So up here on the top, this would be a 16 on the top, and then this would be 3 times 3, so that would be 9. Okay, so 16 minus 9 would be 7, and I'm really sorry I misspoke. Okay, on our denominator is x, y to the 5 over 4. Okay, now we want to subtract with our exponents. So this is going to be x to the negative 13 over 4 minus 1, y to the 7 over 12 minus 5 over 4. Okay, so our x, this would be a 4 over 4. So negative 13 minus 4 would be a negative 17 over 4. And on the y's, we would have to get common denominators, so that would be 12. So you would need to times this by 3, so that would be a negative 15. And 7 minus 15 would be a negative 2. Okay, so this would be a negative 8 over 12. Okay. And negative 8 over 12 will reduce to 2/3, negative 2/3. So I wrote this very poorly. So this is x to the negative 17 over 4, y to the negative 2/3 once you reduce your negative 8 over 12. This equal sign should not be here at all. So this is x 1 over x to the 17 over 4, y to the 2/3 power. And that would be your answer for that one. Okay, number 5, use quadratic formula to solve the equation. Give exact answers and no decimals. So for you to use quadratic formula, this right-hand side has to be equal to 0. So we will minus 5 on both sides. So this is 3p squared plus 0p minus 5 equals 0. So quadratic formula is negative b plus or minus the square root. b squared minus 4ac all over 2a. So your b is 0. So you really don't even need to write that down. So this is plus or minus the square root of 0 squared minus 4 times 3 times negative 5 all over 2 times 3. Okay, so on the top here, we would have 4 times 3 is 12. 12 times negative 5 would be a 60. 2 times 3 would be 6. Okay, so you could break down 60. 60 would break down 4 and 15. 4 breaks down as 2 and 2. 15 breaks down as 3 and 5. So you could take out your 2. So this would be 2 square root of 15 over 6. Reduce your 2 and your 6. So this would be the square root of 15 over 3. And that would be your answer. Don't forget your plus and your minus. Okay, the next one, 5 squared plus 8 minus 8m. So you'll want to add your 8m to both sides. So this would be 5m squared plus 8m plus 8 equals 0. So you plug in your formula. So negative 8 plus or minus the square root of 8 squared minus 4 times 5 times 8 all over 2 times 5. Okay, so 8 squared, that would be 64. And 4 times 5 would be 20. And 20 times 8 would be minus 160. And 2 times 5 would be 10. So negative 8 plus or minus 64 minus 160 would be negative 96 over 10. Okay, I would break down your 96. So that would be 6 and 16. So 6 breaks down as 2 and 3. 16 breaks down at 4 and 4. And those break down with your 2's. So 2 times 2 would be 4, so that would come on the outside. Plus you have a negative, because you have a negative under the square root, that would be an I. So negative 8 plus or minus 4i square root, and 2 times your 3 would be your 6, all over 10. And then you're going to want to break down these in the front, this and this. Okay, so 8 over 10, you want to have 5 in your denominator. So that would be a negative 4 plus or minus 2i square root 6. Once you break down your answer right there. Okay, number 6. Solve each system of equations using matrices, row operations. If the system has no solutions, say that it is inconsistent. And they give you 3 equations. Okay, so since this is a multiple choice test and you don't have a lot of time, if you would go through this process using the row operation and the matrices, you would have more of a chance to getting this question wrong, and it would take up a lot more time than if you just use your answers and go about the process a different way. So what I would do is I would look at question A, take your 0 and plug it in. And of course, when you plug it in, you have to go in order of the alphabet. So you need to ask yourself, okay, what comes first in the alphabet, R, S, or T? Okay, so that would be the one for the 0. Then you would look at the -2 and you would plug that for the one that's in the alphabet in the middle. And then your -5 would go into the last one. You would plug it all in and see if you would get -13. Okay, so we're going to try answer number A. Like I said, this method you will have more success with than if you would do the way that she tells you to do. And of course, she'll never know. So this is 2 times 0, since R comes first in the alphabet, minus 5 times -2, minus 3 times -5, okay? Don't put equals 13. You need to type that part into your calculator and see what does it equal. Okay, so we have 2 times 0 minus 5 times -2 minus 3 times -5. Now, if this equals -13, you're going to check the next one. So this equaled 25. That's not -13. So this one is not your answer. We know it's not A. I'm going to skip B, but I'm going to put that down here that I skipped it so I don't get confused at what I did. So we're skipping B. We'll come back to that answer choice at the end. Okay, question C. Okay, so we'll plug this stuff in. So question C says R is 2, so this would be 2 plus 4 times -6. Wait a minute. I don't know why I'm plugging it into the middle equation. I guess it doesn't matter. Plus 5 times -3. Okay. You should technically do this in order and start with the first one. I don't know why. I just saw the middle one first. So we'll check the middle one first. Just whatever you do, make sure you're consistent and you have a pattern when you're plugging these in. Okay, that gave me -37. So I know that it's not going to be C. If you do get one to work, you do need to check the other two equations. Okay, we're going to D. So let's go back to the first equation. I should have done that on the last one anyway. Try to be methodical when you do this. Okay, so we will type in the second one. I know 2 times 0 is 0. So I don't even know why I put that in there. Probably didn't need to. Okay, so that gives me 31. So that is not -13. So I know it's not D. So my answer is B, no solution. Okay. All right, now, so no solution is what they call inconsistent. So as a side note, if you know anything about English, if there's one that's inconsistent, well, you better have one that is consistent. Okay, so consistent would mean that you have an infinite number of solutions. Okay, and what that would mean is that if yours was consistent, it would have worked for all answer choices. So when you're doing this process, let's say it did work for A, you do have to check at least C to make sure that it's not consistent. Unless, of course, consistent isn't one of your answer choices, then you can get away with not doing that. So it worked for every answer. Okay, just as a side note. All right, same thing, different problem. So we will check A out first. So this is minus -1 plus 3 times -4 plus 5 times -2. And we're going to find out, does that equal 29? Okay, so that gives me negative 21, so it's not A. Okay, check out B. So we have negative 2 plus 3 times negative 3 plus 5 times 4. Okay, we're going to plug that in. Okay, so that gives me 9. That is not the same thing as 29, so I know it's not B. C. Okay, so that would be 3 plus 12 plus 10. If we do it faster, that gives me 25. So it's not C. I know it has to be D, but let's go ahead and show you what the real answer would look like. Even though I already know at this point it has to be D. So if you would plug this in, that would be 3 plus 6 plus 20, and that gives you 29. So that one worked. Plug it in for the next one. If this was my final, and I know the questions are pretty high, you know, you miss one and you're already at a 95, I would definitely check all answers. You have plenty of time to do so on the test. All right, that would be negative 15 minus 2 plus 24. And what did I do? This should be 7. I messed something up. I probably looked at one of the... Oh, that was a minus 2. I was going to say, I probably looked at something wrong. There we go. That gave me 7. So that worked. It's really easy to get cross-eyed, I think, when you're doing these. Okay, negative 3 minus 2 times 2 minus 4. Okay, so negative 3 minus 4 minus 4, and that gives me negative 11. So it is definitely D. Okay, number 7. You know she loves her boxes. You can pretty much guarantee you will see a box on the final. An open box is made from a square piece of metal by removing a square that's 4 inches from each corner and turning up the edges. If the volume is 676 inches, what is the length of the sides of the square sheet of metal? All right, so here's what we're looking at. So this is a square, even though mine looks like a rectangle. So these are 4. And if we were looking at it like this, we know that these would be 4 because she's telling you you're cutting out these squares and they're 4 inches. The problem is I don't know the length there. So the total length here is going to be x minus, and you would add these together. So 4 plus 4 would be 8. All right. Now the big key word here is that it's a square. So when you do your volume, instead of length times width times height, the length and the width are the same since it's a square. So this would be like the width squared times the height. Okay. I know my volume is 676. Okay. My W is x minus 8 squared, and I know the height is 4. Okay, so what you're going to have to do here is you need to expand this out, and your teacher probably called it to FOIL or do distributive property. One of those lines. I'm not sure how your teacher worded it last year. So basically, we've got x times x is x squared. x times negative 8, negative 8x, negative 8 times x, negative 8x. Negative 8 times 8 is a positive 64. So this is x squared minus 16x plus 64. Okay, so we're going to plug this answer in for that. So x squared minus 16x plus 64, and we will times that by 4, so we will need to distribute that 4 to all of those pieces. So this is 4x squared minus 64x plus 256. All right, now what you're going to want to do is get this whole thing equal to 0 so that you can either factor it or do quadratic formula. I probably wouldn't recommend completing the square. I would stick to either factoring or quadratic formula since that's the easiest way to go. So we'll minus 676 on both sides, so we get our 0 equals your 4x squared minus 64x, and then 256 minus 676 is negative 420. And then you need to look, if we're going to factor, we want to take these lower than what they are. So I can factor out a 4 because 4 goes into 64 and 420. So we'll factor out a 4. So that leaves me at x squared minus 16x minus 105. And that's still, of course, equal to 0. All right, so we've got our 4 in the front, and we need to factor this. We know we have our x's here. We know the signs will be different, and the bigger number will get the negative. So we'll have a negative and a positive. We'll have to figure out what times to 105, and we'll subtract to give me 16. So I'll probably start with 5 and 21. So 21 minus 5 gives me 16. So I know that 5 and 21 are my answers. 21 is bigger, so it will get the minus. 5 will get the plus. All right, now you need to set each piece equal to 0. So you don't need to set the 4 equal to 0 because there's no x combined with the 4. So I just need to set this piece and that piece equal to 0. So x minus 21 equals 0. Add your 21. So x equals 21. X plus 5 equals 0. So x equals negative 5. So the negative you can ignore because you have to have the sheet of metal. You can't have something that doesn't exist. So the 21 is your answer. So the length of the sides would be 21. So the sides would be 21 inches. So that would be your answer. Okay, question number 8. Write the equation of the lines that satisfy the given conditions, both vertical and horizontal lines, through the point -3, 5. This problem might sound confusing, but it's probably one of the easiest problems on the entire test. Okay, so we're just going to start with plotting that point. So we have -3 up. So basically you want... I didn't do a very good job drawing that point. It's going to go through here and through there. So you want the name of this line here and then the name of that line there. So basically you're looking, this is an x, this is your y, and that's basically your answer. So your answer is x equals -3.5. That would be this line right here. And then you want the one that goes through the y-axis, so that would be y equals 5. And that is your answer. So whatever your x-coordinate is, you put x equals that number. Whatever the y-coordinate is, you put y equals that number. Okay, number 9, write the equation of the line. The y-intercept is 0, 3, and it's parallel to y equals -x minus 1. So first thing you want to do is figure out what is your given slope. So your slope is -1. Parallel slope means it's the same slope. So again, that is -1. So we have y equals mx plus b. So we're going to plug in our x and our y. So 3 equals -1 times 0 plus b. So our b is equal to 3. And then we just plug that in. You make sure you use either the parallel or the perpendicular slope. So y equals mx plus b. So this is the m we're going to use. And that's the b we're going to use. And this would be your answer. Okay. All right, next one, write an equation of the line. They give you another point, but this time they say it's perpendicular. So your given slope is -2, and the perpendicular slope, you have to flip it and change the sign. So this is -2/1, so we'll flip it, so it's 1/2. Change the sign, instead of negative, it will go positive. So y equals mx plus b. Here's your x, here's your y, and there's your m. So -4 equals 1/2 times -2 plus b. So -4 equals -1 plus b. Add your 1 to both sides. So -3 equals your b value. Make sure when you plug it back in that you're using the perpendicular m and not the given m. So y equals mx plus b. So y equals 1/2 x minus 3. And that would be your answer for that one. Okay, number 10. Find the center and radius of the circle. And then they give you a big equation. So the first thing you got to do is you got to get the number by itself to the other side. So I would minus 508. And then when you rewrite your next line, you want to put the x's together, put the y's together, leave some gaps because we have to complete the square. So this is going to be x squared plus 32x, leaving our gap, plus y squared minus 32y, leave your gap, equals -508. Okay, so over here you want to look at that number right there on the x, divide it by 2 and square it, add that to both sides. Over here you'll look at that number, so -32 divided by 2 and square it. Okay, so then you're going to want to put this and this together. Now you need to figure out what is 32 divided by 2. That is 16, and the 2 goes on the outside. So that and that will go together. And what is -32 divided by 2? Well, that's -16 squared. Okay, then I would probably get your calculator out and I would just type that in. Let your calculator do the handiwork. And of course, there will be one on the computer screen that you can use. Okay, so that whole thing equals 4. So that's good news. So your center, and remember, if it's in parentheses, you have to change the signs. Okay, so it will be -16, and that one will be +16. And your radius, you have to square root it. So it would be the square root of 4. So you're going to pick the one that says 2. I can guarantee you that 4, -16, 16, and the radius as being 4 will be an answer choice. And it will be the wrong one because you have to square root it. So you should pick -16, 16, and 2. Okay, number 11. Evaluate the function f of a plus 4 when f of a equals 2a to the third plus 2a. Okay, so basically you're taking this and plugging it into the a's. So f of a plus 4 is going to equal 2 times a plus 4 to the third power plus 2 times a plus 4. Now, we all wish and pray that that was one of your answer choices, but of course, that would be way too easy. So that is not an answer choice. So what you have to do is we have to write this out 3 times. And then you're going to have to do the distributive property, or you're going to have to FOIL a whole bunch. However, your teacher last year worded that. Okay, so you're going to have to FOIL these two. And remember, when you're FOILing or distributive property on these, you can only do 2 at a time. And then you have to add in the third one after that. Okay, so we're going to leave the 2 out on the front. Okay, so a times a, that would be a squared. All right, we're going to think about this here in the middle. A times 4 is 4a. And then in the middle, we would have a times 4 is 4a. So 4a plus 4a, that would be 8a. And 4 times 4 is 16. And we'll go ahead and distribute right there. 2 times a would be 2a. 2 times 4 would be 8. All right. Now the fun part begins, because now we have to distribute this with this. I don't think this problem is too difficult. It's very tedious, of course, but that's about it. All right, a squared times a, that would be a to the third. A squared times 4, that would be 4a squared. 8a times a would be 8a squared. 8a times 4 would be 32a. 16 times a would be 16a, and 16 times 4, I think that would be 64. Let's double check it. Yeah, 64. Okay, so now we want to combine our like terms. So we have, I'm still going to leave that 2 on the outside there. So we have a to the third, and 4 plus 8 would be 12, a squared. 32 and 16, that would be 48a plus 64. Okay, now you're going to want to distribute that 2 to all of those pieces there. Okay, so 2 times a to the third, 2a to the third. 2 times 12 would be 24a. 2 times 48, 96a. 2 times 64 would be 128. Plus a 2a plus an 8. All right, now we still have to combine one more time. Oh, I totally forgot the 2 on that one. Make sure you add that in if you forgot it also. Okay, we're almost done. 2a to the third plus 24a squared. 96 plus 2 would be 98a. 128 plus 8 would be 136. And this is the answer that would be on the page. Okay, number 12. Give the possible values for the degree of the polynomial and the sign, positive or negative, for the x to the nth term. Okay, so this one right here is odd and it is positive. Okay, so the degree would be odd, yes. The sign is negative, no. If it was negative, the s would have gone like that. Degree is even and positive. That would have been a U. Can't identify. Well, I think you can. The degree is even and negative. That would have been an upside down U. None of the above. It's none of the above. Okay. Next one looks like that. So that would be odd and negative. That's your first choice right there. Okay, next diagram, up U, that would be a even function and positive. So that would be B. And this is just memorizing. And the last one, upside down U, that would be negative and even. So those are just memorizing definitions from the beginning of the year. Okay, number 13. So graph the following functions. Okay, so, and these are just rough sketches. So the negative tells me it opens down. The 2 tells me it's a vertical stretch. So that means skinny. And remember, I remember this because it's backwards from your normal bathroom scale. So the larger the number, the smaller the graph. S for skinny or small, S for stretch, for vertical stretch. So the S's match. Okay, the +1, this is backwards from the coordinate grid. So this is going to go left 1. And the -2 is going to go down 2. So we'll go left 1, down 2, and it's going to be a skinny parabola. Okay. Okay, the next one, because this is positive, we open up. The 1/2, so the smaller the number, the larger the graph, so that's called a vertical compression. So that means your graph will be wide or fatter, however you would like to word that. X -4, it's backwards from the coordinate grid, so we're going to go right 4. And the -5 means we're going to go down 5. Okay, so we will go right 4, down 5, put our dot there. You know your graph has to look wide. Now, when you are in doubt and you're not 100% sure, especially if the dot was on there on 2 choices and you couldn't tell how wide or skinny it was, like this versus normal, then you may need to do an XY chart and figure out more exact what they are. And if I was going to do an XY chart, I probably would pick 3 and 5, just one on each side of the vertex so that you could get it more exact. Number 14, given the equation of the specified asymptotes, so you're finding your vertical asymptotes. That's what you're doing. So vertical asymptotes mean that you have to simplify first and set the denominator equal to 0. So we would add 1 to both sides, so your vertical asymptote on the first one would be 1. Okay, on the second one, you're going to need to factor the denominator. So I would take a 4 out of each of these spots, and I would take out the negative since it's on the front number there. So we're going to leave the top the same, take out a -4, so that would be x squared, and we're changing signs, remember? So minus 5x plus 4. Because I took out the negative, the signs are all backwards from what's listed in the print. Okay. So we're going to factor this. So we need to times to 4 and add to 5. So that has to be 4 and 1. Okay, so if the sign's positive, they're both the same. They're both going to be minuses. All right, so at x minus 1, those cancel. So x minus 1 equals 0, so x would be 1. Now that will be an answer choice, but it's not a vertical asymptote. That is your whole. So this is not your answer, not a vertical asymptote. Only the second one would be a vertical asymptote. Now, if you were doing domain, you would say, of course, it's not equal to 1. And then over here, the one that you really want would be 4. So you only include this one in the domain, but if it's asking for a vertical asymptote, your only answer is 4. So that's the one you would pick. And I guarantee you 1 will also be one of your answer choices. But it's the wrong answer choice. Now, if it's asking for a domain, you would say all real numbers except x doesn't equal 1 and x doesn't equal 4. So it's only domain that you include both. All right, number 15. Use the factor theorem to determine whether or not the second polynomial is a factor of the first. So when they give it to you like this with the divide sign, you could do it two ways. You could either do synthetic division, and if it equals, the remainder was 0, then it would be yes. Or you could use the factor theorem, which I think the factor theorem's faster, but other people like the synthetic division method, and it doesn't matter. You would change the sign and plug it into your ends. So we're changing our sign. We're plugging that in, and I would plug that in the calculator as one big string. Okay, so that gives me 0 when I type that whole thing in. So since this equals 0, then it is a yes, and you would pick the one that says yes, it's a factor. If it was any number but 0, then you would pick the no. So any number but 0 would equal a no answer. Okay, number 16, convert to logarithmic form. You will need to memorize these properties. So the property you need to memorize is y equals b to the x, and then x equals log base b y. Okay, so you're going to start here with saying log, and you figure out your base is 121. So that's usually subscript and smaller. The part that is your equal sign will be your bigger font right there, 11 equals, and then the exponent is what it equals, 1/2, and that's your answer. So this is literally just memorizing the formula and plugging them into the formula. You need to be able to go from both forms of them. Okay, so the next one, convert log base 13 of 1 over 169 equals -2. So your base is the base of your exponent. The equal sign is your exponent, and then you go back. So it's kind of like you start here, then you skip, go to that, and then go back to the one you skipped. And that's your answer. All right, number 17, find the domain of the function log base 2 of 4x plus 22 equals y. All right, so to find the domain, you have to look at what's with your log, and you set that is greater than 0. So that has to be greater than 0, and then you just solve for x. So if you just remember that part, then this really isn't too terrible. Divide both sides by 4, and you will have to reduce, and that will reduce to negative 11 over 2. So x is greater than negative 11 over 2. I don't think she had that in interval notation, but if she did, you would pick negative 11 over 2, comma, infinity, and both of those would have parentheses. But I don't think she put it in interval notation. Okay, next one, y equals log base 3 of 3x plus 16 plus 1. So everything that's in the parentheses, you're going to say that that is greater than 0. So we would minus 16 on both sides. So x is greater than negative 16. Divide by 3. So x is greater than negative 16 over 3. And of course, if that was interval notation, you would pick the one that says negative 16 over 3, comma, infinity. And both of those would have parentheses. I believe that this is the way that the answers are in the format. Okay, number 18, use the calculator and the change of base conversion formula to find the logarithm correct to 3 decimal places. So log base 6 of 4.6. I can guarantee you that the calculator on the computer screen will not be able to type this in exactly as it is seen, so you will have to memorize how to do that. So it is log, and I use 4.6. This would also work if you would put ln or the natural log, but it's the large font. So that's how I kind of remember. Log of the large font over log base 6. So it's log of the small font. Okay, and then you have to make sure that you end this parentheses. If you're going to get this wrong, that's probably why. So you must end the parentheses when you're typing this in. Okay, so you're going to hit your log button. So that's up here. So log 4.6, end the parentheses, hit the divide button, log of 6. And that gives you 0.8517. So if it was 3 decimal places, 852 was the one that you would pick. All right, now this will also work if you use the ln button or the natural log button. They both have to be the natural log button. I usually always use plain log, but it doesn't matter. You could do it this way also and get the exact same answer. So it just depends on if you're a natural log or plain log, but you get the same answer. Number 19. Solve the problem. Cindy will require $24,000 in 3 years to return to college to get an MBA degree. How much money does she need now so that if she invests at 7% compounded continuously, she will have enough for school? Round your answer to the nearest dollar. Okay, so our formula is A equals PE to the RT. Okay, so A is your amount that you want. So the amount that we want to have is $24,000. We don't know what the starting amount is. So the P is what we're trying to find. R is for the rate. So you have to look. The rate is 7%. We need that as a decimal. So 0.07. And your T is your time. So your time is 3 years. Okay, so we want to multiply on the exponents here. So 0.7 times 3, well 7 times 3 is 21, so this would be 0.21. All right, now you need to know that e is actually a number. It's not a variable, and we're actually solving for p. So these are timesing, so the opposite of timesing is dividing. We need to divide by e to the 0.21. Okay, and then you're going to get your calculator out, and then you're going to type this stuff in the calculator. So we have 24,000 divided by... Okay, and then you got to look for your E on this calculator. It's really hard to see, but it's right behind. And of course, I have this on autofocus so that it wouldn't keep going in and out, but it's after the ln. I think you can see it right there. So we will hit second ln, and then you'll hit 0.21. All right, so this is how much she's going to need. 4.02. It said round to the nearest dollar. So she needs $19,454. I guess she'll find those 2 cents in the parking lot. I don't know. Okay, number 20. For f of x equals log base a of x, where a is greater than 1, they want to know what is the x-intercept when y equals 1, x equals what? When y equals -1, x equals what? So this came word from word. There's a picture of your book, and I think this is also emphasized on the very last lab. So on your book for natural logs, it's going to cut through this point right here at 1, 0. Right here, this is going to be a, 1. And then down here, that point right there, and basically the logarithm function will look like this. And there's an asymptote right here on the y-axis. This point right here is 1 over a, -1. So this is literally just memorizing this diagram that was a picture that came straight from the math textbook. So the x-intercept is 1, 0. So when y equals 1, x equals a, so it depends on what the base is. When y equals -1, then you would have 1 over a. All right, so as an added bonus on here, the domain of this function, if it asked for the domain, would be 0 to infinity. 0 would not be included since it's the asymptote. And the range would be -infinity to infinity, just in case it asked for those questions too. But this came off of one of the labs that you guys did. So I wish you the best of luck and good luck studying for your final.